Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of From the Periphery podcast. It's your host, Israa, and I'm here joined by Leila today.
Hi, everyone.
And I'm super excited about this episode. It's been almost 2 years in the making, and we're here with like two really close comrades and friends, Juls and Alaa. We met through the People's Want Network, something that we've talked about in our previous episodes as in the collective. But yeah, now we're gonna sit down and really get into it. Jules, you want to introduce yourself first?
Hi. All of you, I'm super excited with this discussion. So how to introduce myself? Well, I'm Chilean. I'm also French. For the past decades, I mostly lived in Santiago, in Chile, where I've been part of different collectives, mainly part of precarious workers union and the feminist movement. And from this organization, I was also part of the revolt in 2019, 2020 in Chile, which is actually not so rare or not so unique because most people in Chile took part of the revolt, participated in it in different ways and action. In this like popular uprising that are called estallido or revuelta in Spanish. And I was also part of this group of 9 people who was in charge of writing and rewriting and rewriting again the manifest, the text, Revolutions of Our Times that we're going to be discussing today.
Thanks, Jules. And Alaa, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hello, my name is Alaa. I'm Sudanese. I was part of the Sudanese movement, the revolution of 2018-2019, and a member of the resistance committees in Khartoum. I guess my first engagement with movement was through a feminist movement in Sudan, feminist collective, because it was like a totalitarian Islamic regime in Sudan, and women's rights was in a shady level. I joined the People's Want in the festival of 2024 when it was the launch of the whole network.
Thanks, Alaa. So a little bit of a context for the conversation. Leila and I are both members of the From the Periphery Media Collectives, as well as members of the People's Want Network and organizers within the network with Jules and Alaa. But also, the From the Periphery Media Collective is also a member of the People's Want as a media collective because of that shared connection of internationalism from below and elevating voices from the periphery. And so we're just really excited to be sitting here to have this like conversation about what internationalism means to us, what the People's Want means to us in regards of manifesting our politics around internationalism and our visions for the work that we do and how that connects to our identities, our own resistance back home, and building the world where many worlds fit. Leila, do you want to give us a little bit of a context around the People's Want Network?
Sure. Hello again, everyone. Well, let's go back a little bit in history and time to like the end of 2010. There was a huge wave of uprisings happening globally. There was the Arab Spring, which was a transnational revolutionary wave which swept across the whole Middle East and North Africa region. There was, of course, the anti-austerity protests and movement in Spain and in Greece, and the Occupy movement. That was followed a few years later by the uprising in Ukraine. And then in 2018, 2019, there was another huge wave of uprisings in Sudan, Iraq, Lebanon, Hong Kong, Chile, and elsewhere. And these uprisings had some specific characteristics which united them. They tended to be against political authoritarianism and also against socio-economic injustice. And they weren't defined by traditional ideologies, but were much more rooted in ideas of self-organization, building autonomy and popular power. And we saw occupations of space being a main feature of those uprisings. Many places they were occupying buildings, universities, and then you had an example such as Syria, where 2/3 of the territory was liberated from the state, and people started self-organizing in local councils to keep their communities functioning and provide not only the support for the ongoing protests, but also the day-to-day life of people living in those territories. And then, of course, came a big wave of counter-revolution and defeat, and many of our comrades were killed, they were imprisoned, they were driven into exile. But these uprisings were really transformative for a generation and led to the asking of a lot of questions. From a Syria perspective, which was one of the struggles I was most closely involved in, there was a real questioning around internationalism because large parts of the left hadn't stood in solidarity with the Syrian revolution, due, of course, to people taking this very geopolitical abstract analysis, not rooting it in the lived experiences of people on the ground. So many people started asking, what could an internationalism look like, an internationalism from below that's really rooted in people and movements rather than states? And one of the collectives that was asking these questions was a little self-organized cooperative called the Syria Canteen, based in the Paris suburbs, which was made up of Syrian exiles meeting with people in France from the autonomous movement, and also exiles from many other of these uprisings that had been driven out of their countries. And they decided to host a gathering, which they named the People's Want, to bring these people together to share their experiences and share their learnings. And those gatherings kind of continued over a number of years. There were 5 in total, bringing together hundreds of people, and at the public event, thousands of people came. So this translated into what we now have as the People's Want Network, which was officially launched in May 2025.
Thanks, Lei. And since then, as you said, part of the process of coming together in these discussions has been this birthing of a manifesto, The Revolutions of Our Time, which is a political compass for us, and the way in, like, the words in which we articulate our politics and how we find each other and connect with each other and build with each other. And it's now a published piece of work. It was published in France last year, just got published by Haymarket 2 days ago. It's April 20th when we're recording, and it was released on the 14th, so 6 days ago. And it will be published in Spanish in a Mexican publisher in the next coming months, Portuguese, Italian, and German. And so just to see that piece of work take on its international identity and be spread in this way, what's most exciting about the way this book has taken off is a lot of the translations and publications have emerged out of grassroots efforts of people wanting to translate the book, wanting to get it published and getting out further reach, which in itself reflects the politics that we're trying to engage in and show, and becomes a practice of internationalism in of itself. So yeah, a lot of exciting things happening right now. And I thought maybe a good way to start kind of like weaving our conversation together is kind of talking about our experiences, connecting with the People's Want and why we choose to be in that space and organizing that space and how it relates to our own politics and political organizing. Alaa, you want to start us off?
I remember Hamad, a Sudanese comrade, sending me a copy of the manifesto. And yeah, because in Sudan, we have this revolt in 2013, which was among of the Arabic wave of revolution, but it wasn't really existed in media like other revolutions. There was no coverage, there was no any kind of solidarity towards the Sudanese revolutionists. And unfortunately, that's led to a huge massacre. I mean, the regime didn't care the amount of people who would be died. So a lot of people died. And at that point, we felt like we have to kind of build our own way through revolution without any help from outside. And then after the revolution in 2019, after the collapse of the whole process with the war in Sudan right now, at that time, I was like already seeking refuge in East Africa when I met the Sudanese comrade that I know from a long time, and he was explaining about this manifesto. He was talking about internationalism, how to reach for others, how to share mutual aid, and also finding this, I guess, point about the margins, which is a huge dilemma in Sudan. Like one of the center socialist theory, social theory in Sudan about our endless seek of democracy is built about the center and the margin. And it was amazing for me to be introduced to this network of people who actually consider what's going on the margins and consider decentralization and horizontal organizing and movements, which was the base of our revolution in Sudan. I mean, the resistance committees was the key for the revolution because it was horizontal. It was in every neighborhood, in every city in Sudan. So from that and going to the festival, meeting the people, getting to these interesting discussions, about the manifesto, about how can we organize. I guess this was the door for me to get a link with the people once. Yeah.
It's super cool, and I want to connect with what Alaa was sharing, because I think the first time that me and my comrades, feminist comrades from Chile, heard about the Sudanese revolution, it was in a gathering of the People's Want. It was in 2021, and for us, it was like all this huge revolution that had been going on not only for 1 year or a few months, like for such a long time, where like they were able to do like such amazing, incredible changes, such deep political debates, grassroots construction, and a lot of things. For us, we've never heard about that before, because Chile is super far away from Sudan. It's super difficult to have. In Chile, there is a lot of exile, but mainly from the South American region. And it's very, very hard to connect with geographies outside the continent because of language barrier, but also because it's difficult to meet. And these gatherings of the People's Want, I think it was a tremendous opportunity. For example, for us, we were invited at that time by the organizer, the Syrian Canteen. As a Chilean collective, we didn't know much about the Syrian Canteen or the other people invited, but we just arrived and we could discuss and meet, and we could also understand the diversity of the people who were there, because we were quite diverse in our organizing ways, also maybe in our like political statements. We could be standing from different point of view. For example, I was coming from a feminist collective, and we were meeting, I don't know, with independent media in Lebanon, or with people from very different spaces. But it was very great to see also the connections, right? That even though we were very diverse, we had connections that were mainly, but not only, but mainly, I think they were mainly or primarily the connections of having lived an uprising, a revolutionary process, and having like this sensitive and also sometimes so many questions, right? So many unanswered questions, so many doubts, so many things that you want to debate more, to to learn from other experiences of different ways of solving problems. Sometimes it's the same problems that keep coming. I don't know how to deal with the police or how to deal with the loss of revenues, like of precarious work, or there are some problems that are very, very continuous and other that are different in the different contexts. So I think that's super rich. A super rich aspect of the People's Want, and that was there from its beginning. And I think it's continuing to be that in this new scenario of having a network. And that's what we meant, I think, in the book when we said, like, we want to intensify connections, right? We want to intensify the possibility to meet, like that the Chilean feminists can meet the Sudanese revolutionaries and can listen to their experience and can learn from that and maybe also translate it and share and discuss and so on. And other things that we need to circulate, to make circulate, right? Like material solidarity or learnings or intelligence and so on. And yeah, I also wanted to share a little bit about, so it was, Leila made us travel in time. So it was 2021 when we, as a feminist, were invited to join Chilean Feminist, the People's Want gathering. And at that time, like in Chile, there was a lot of kind of hope. Yes, there was a lot of hope because it was a moment of changing the constitution, and it was a change that was obtained thanks to a popular uprising. It was only the uprising that opened this opportunity after like 30 years of political status quo under the neoliberal and super Catholic and conservative constitution. So that was the moment when we arrived to the People Want and we met for the first time. But only a couple of years later, it was a very different scenario in Chile because like the constitutional process failed. It really, really was an important failure. And at that moment, I and the other comrades, we already had links with the People's Want. And I think the People's Want was another type of space that was very useful at that moment too. You know, the moment where there is not that much hope, the moment where there is more like confusion or even depression, like where people are like very, very in despair. And where it was, at least in Chile, very difficult to collectively discuss of what had happened in the past year, like the mistakes, but to politically discuss that, not just to be like giving fault to one sector or one group of people, but to be trying to understand like what were the mistakes, what should be done better, what were the limitation of the stakes that we engage in, and so on. And I think in that moment we were like writing this this manifesto, and it was very, very useful for me too. Like this moment of collectively learning about a situation that was not only Chilean-centered, but it was wider, but also allowed in Chile to rediscuss about the process. So one of the things that we did with the text is that it was debated many times. It was also debated in Santiago. And it was, for example, for me, the first time that I not only for me and like the 15 comrades that were there debating from different collectives in Santiago, the first time that we gathered to debate again about what had happened and to remember it also. It's like a memory exercise, but a learning exercise, a transmission exercise. And I think that's also what that's a great possibility of the People's Want and internationalism, right? You not only how to say, give or can make circulate books or people or learnings, but also kind of energy and hope and moments when you need more strength because you don't find it in your own struggle, but you can get so inspired with the struggles of others in other places.
Yeah, I'd just like to echo a lot of what Jules said, really. I mean, I met the Syrian Canteen when my book that I co-authored, Burning Countries, Syrians in Revolution and War, was translated into French, and I had gone on a tour of France more than once, actually, but the Syrian Canteen was one of the collectives that invited me to speak. And then they invited me to their fourth festival, which was in 2022, I think, in the Paris suburbs. And from that festival, they invited me to become part of the team, which was trying to move away from just having these international gatherings hosted by the Syrian Canteen, but actually to build a network which was independent called the People's Want, and working on trying to see what the organizational structure was like, working on writing the manifesto, all these different things. And again, it was fascinating for me because the struggle in Chile was something that I didn't know anything about, really. All of my work had been mainly focused in the Middle East and North Africa region through the Arab Spring. So to meet comrades from places like Chile, Taiwan, it was just such a breath of fresh air, and to bring those shared experiences and to see the commonalities between our struggles and also the diversity of our struggles. But I think there was a clear desire amongst all of the participants to really work together and try to see what internationalism could look like in the 21st century. And like Jules, it was also a very hopeful and positive experience for me, because all of the political spaces that I was working in were so filled by that time in trauma and despair. We'd gone through this massive defeat. We'd lost a lot of people who were close to us. And just to be in a space where we could step back a bit from that and really try to think more about long-term strategies. It just gave me so much energy and positivity. And I think many people that come to the People's Want share that feeling.
Yes, yes. As Leila, you were saying, I think one of the important lessons that I think was very clear since the first gathering, or since the first gathering in which all of us participated, was the importance of having spaces for strategical debates, and for like that we needed to learn from all the defeats, because we came from a cycle that was so intense in uprising, but also a lots of defeats, right? Even when like regimes felt, there was not like a substantive change, like we could say, like in the long-term revolutionary changes. So like to have a space for having these strategical debates and to strengthen our own and collective, or also our own forces, I think it's one of the major goals of the People's Want. And I think it was something very, very shared also. Like there was always this saying, and I think that, okay, there was this super powerful uprising, but we know we were not sufficiently prepared, and we will never be completely prepared, of course, but how to transmit like wisdom from what we had from our own experience, so that the next uprisings will be more prepared, wherever they are, with the people who will participate there, even if it's not ourselves directly.
Yeah, my experience very much mirrors what everyone here is saying so far. I uh I discovered the People's Want in 2024, late like fall 2024, because Ayman, who our listeners will know as a collective member, was talking about, it's like, oh yeah, I'm going to Marseille for this really cool festival with these really cool people, and it's like really cool work. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And I'm kind of jealous and like, tell me more about this. And so he did. And he's like, wait, let me see if I could like maybe get you invited, because it's like super like it's invite only and I don't know, but don't get your hopes up and blah, blah, blah. Um, and then I got the invitation. I was like, oh my God, yes. And I was super excited. Because honestly, in that moment, what you're saying, like, it was very real. I'd been working in mutual, like, focused on mutual aid work for Gaza for a year at that point. I was really struggling. I felt very isolated. The depression was real. I had started to, like, deal with a lot of, like, repression at a, like, from the state. And it was, like the people I was organizing with, I did not actually feel connected with, and aligned politically with, but I was doing it because the necessity of the moment. And I felt like, and it made it very hard. And a lot of these big questions where I wanted people to talk with and engage with and think about and strategize with, and finding nobody to engage in these conversations with, which was basically a reflection of like all my political experience, where it's like you go to a place, it gets super siloed onto one issue or one topic. You're not making space for the multitudes of what it means to be alive in this moment, and feeling like not there was a disconnect politically between the people, and it wasn't, and like really struggling to find a place where I'm like, okay, this is a political home. This is a place I could organize with. This is a place I feel seen, I feel heard, I can connected to the others I'm working with. Um, and yeah, I mean, it was a 1 week festival, but I really walked away feeling like I knew everyone for years, or these are like life friendships that are being developed. Like I felt so alive in a way that like I hadn't felt in years. It was like I remember walking away and immediately going to Leila, be like, so what do I have to do? How do I get more involved? How do I engage more? Um, and like everything that we're saying here of like this like question of strategies and slowing things down and reflecting and learning and memory transmission, and like finding a way to weave our struggles together and not getting like just stuck on the one thing. It was just like, oh shit, it is possible to do this. It is possible to organize in this way, to find a space where people are thinking around this stuff and willing to take the time to consider the hard questions, and also our positionalities within the system and what that means in our strategies. Um, so yeah, so for me, it was like a instant, like I fell in love. I felt like I was home, and a place that I've been searching for. Uh, and yeah, and like it is at this point for me, like the one of the main primary spaces that I organize, and it also feeds into so much more of how I think now in the world. Um, yeah, so I'm yeah curious. Yeah, how are y'all like? How has this impacted you as an organizer?
I think one of the things that's been really refreshing for me is to be in a political space which isn't trying to impose uniformity or dogmatism in terms of approach or ideology onto people. People that are involved in the People's Want come from, first of all, from very diverse geographies. I think we have members in all continents now, but also people from very different kinds of struggles. We have people like Jules, who comes from the feminist movement. We have people who are doing very much land-based, local-focused work, building food autonomy and farming. We have people that come from media collectives, from workers' struggles. So I find that diversity very enriching, that there's a possibility to really listen to each other and see what you can take away instead of really trying to fit everyone within the same mold. And I think it makes our analysis much richer, and it makes the possibilities for action going forward much greater.
Yeah, also, I completely agree. But I was also thinking, and it's something that you were also mentioning, Isra, is it's super strange because it's super counterintuitive. But I think the hypothesis and of the People's Want, what we're trying to do right now with the People's Want, it's something that it's not easy to find in other places, where we are very much governed by the urgency and the necessity of the moment, which is, of course, a reality. We all live in a super fucked up world, and it's getting, I don't know how it is possible, but worse and worse, which is amazing, because you were like imagining 2 years ago it could not get worse, but it did. But at the same moment, there is so much space for possibilities of things occurring. I think the fall of Assad is maybe one of the biggest sign of that moment we are living, even though there's still a genocide in Gaza, even though now like we can see how imperialist wars are worse than like what we have been living in the last years. And even there's like an economical crisis, huge economical crisis, devastating lots of territories in the world, and the ecology. Well, okay, I will not continue with all the crises and so on. There is still, I think, a space for possibility, for change, for revolution, actually. But for that to happen, I think one of the learnings that we have been making together and building together is that we need to, it's very difficult, but we need to stop being in a rhythm that doesn't allow us to think and to organize on the medium and long term. It doesn't mean that we cannot, we don't need to attend the present, and we do. I think we do it in every one of our collectives. I think, of course, our Iranian comrades have been showing us, because there are Iranian comrades and collectives in the People's One, how they're like being able to be in the urgency of the situation, but also how they can connect with a network in which what they're living serves to build political clarity for others, political learnings from others, and how they also can gain, we hope, some strength because they are in this network. It's not only a gift that they give us, it's also something that they can have in return, right? This is kind of mutual aid. It's something that flows in both directions. And I think it's hard to do it, particularly in the super urgent time, but I think it's something that needs to be done and that we're trying to do together in the People's Want.
Well, I guess the main impact was how, for me, like personally, how can I be organized? I can keep organized things while being in exile. For me, my whole experience was in Sudan, yeah, with different communities in Sudan, but was all in Sudan. So suddenly in 2023, I find myself out of Sudan, and the need to be connected with the resistance, with the emergency room, as we call it right now, is more important. And also having this hardship of being exiled. I mean, facing like bureaucratic systems, racism, xenophobia, and at the same time, the urgent need to do something. And I guess at some point we were sharing different analyses on what's going on the area. And it feels really simple and connected. I mean, what's happening in the whole region, how we can act together against this, and yeah, finding the like links to the same disputes in Sudan that's happening in different areas in the world. That's actually, for me, it's for us in exile, it's more easier to tackle. Like at some point, it just became like more obvious for me how, as a Sudanese, we could organize from exile, what we can do, the kind of links we have, the working with other members in the networks, the kind of shifting the movement to be an international movement, and like fighting for Sudan from East Africa, fighting for Sudan from France. Yeah.
And of course, the question of exile and diaspora communities has been very central to the People's Want. It's something that we have a whole chapter on in the manifesto, because revolutionaries from around the world were forced to flee their homes. And that's often seen as being solely negative or a humanitarian issue. But actually, we wanted to show that can also be something positive, something full of potential, because you have different revolutionaries from many different geographies meeting together in certain cities across the world, like in Paris, in Berlin, in London. So how do we use that potential? How do we meet with those people and really understand and learn from their experience, and seeing them as political actors, not just people who need humanitarian assistance or solidarity for their basic needs and their daily lives, but engaging them really in political discussions and political strategizing.
Yeah, and this moving exile into a position of attack, right? Like as the manifesto says, I think is really critical when we talk about the political depression that is very present in our movements right now. Because like in the dominant framework, it's some young activists gets riled up, hits the streets, and then they're either kidnapped by the state, killed, forced into exile, which means that now they retire as a political activist, or quote unquote grow up and basically integrate into the system. And this position essentially rejects that and says, no, we could meet in other ways. Even if we can't meet at home, even if we can't do it, yes, we may have been forced to leave or we may have chosen to leave because of the conditions, but either way, we're still connected and we choose to do that. We choose to remain in the fight. And that's something that I connect with deeply, both as someone who has been in diaspora for a good chunk of their life and not chosen. Like, I didn't choose to be a diaspora when my parents moved when I was a child, but also in this moment, I am also choosing to be in exile because of the political conditions at home. And in my secondary home, Turtle Island, right? And so that chapter had me sitting down and rethink what it means to be part of diaspora.
I think also that experience of coming from two, or in some cases more, places gives you a very unique perspective as well, because you have the cultural knowledge of more than one place, you have the political knowledge of more than one place, and you're in a unique position where you can transmit that. And that, of course, happened to me a lot with my work when the Syrian Revolution started out. I did a lot of writing and a lot of public speaking, both of which are things that I absolutely hate. I'm much more comfortable just politically organising behind the scenes. But because I had that ability to explain what was happening in Syria to a wider audience, because I knew and understood the context, I really felt it as a personal responsibility. That's what I could contribute to the struggle in Syria.
Yeah, I was thinking that I think what we propose to do with exile, it's very consistent with the proposal we do of internationalism from below, and also like internationalism connecting different levels of life, like very local daily life, but also like this kind of planetary movement, or like sometimes struggles that could be very far away and so on. And I have been thinking lately, because I'm like now in Peru, and I'm in places like very devastated by minery, like what all the minerals are like being pulled out of the ground and are being like traveled by train. Like there are trains that only travel some only contains minerals, no people, only minerals, like to the port, and then they're like exported to I don't know where, like to do cell phones or weapons or I don't know what. And so there's already an interconnection of our territories, right? Which is super evident when we see it like ecologically, like there's this interconnection of capitalism, extractivism, also forced migration, and a super long history also, right, of coloniality and racism. And so I was thinking we are already connected by dispossession. I don't know if we say that in English, but dispossession, like we are already connected by that, and I think we know it and we can feel it. And it's something that I think it's very shared, like in the margins. We know that we share this long history of dispossession, that it's global. It's not the same everywhere, but it has like a global pattern. So I think what we're trying to do now is to also see how we can be interconnected, but from another point of view, right? From the point of view of like the potential of our struggles, the interconnection of our territories, not in terms of minerals, right? Or things that you can extract from those territories, but in terms of what we can give to each other. And in our daily lives, we're already interconnected when we're seeing, like, I don't know, the news of what is happening super, super far away, or like also the extractivist issues that are in Sudan. And I've learned from that thanks to Alaa, you know, and how it's also impacting our daily life. So I think there's like a proposal there that is very powerful. It's not new, because internationalism is not a new. It's not a new proposal. That's a good thing. I think we can have lots of previous experiences, some super old experiences like the union, the union internationalism. Some more recent experience, like all we could see, like with the resistance for Palestine organizing in the last years. But I think what we offer is like this renewal of the way of thinking in internationalism, connecting also everyday life and also our territories and our local struggles and so on. Not so much as a new layer of struggles that we need to consider, but more, as you were saying at some point, Isra, like as a way to weave our different struggles and problems and issues, but also what we have, what we can share, what we can bring to the other threads we weave with.
I think that's very important because we're not looking at internationalism as something abstract and that stands on its own. It's really rooted in our local territories, in our everyday struggles, and really working from the bottom up rather than the top down.
Yeah, which I've really like, I mean, in my personal experience and also in like doing some talks for the manifesto in different spaces, the reoccurring question of like, well, what does it mean to connect the local to the global? It's a question that is really hard for me to articulate. And maybe that's part of it is because it feels like it's practice based and an orientation, at least for me. I start off at the spaces of is the same as what the manifesto says, where it's like we don't disregard each other's struggles. We acknowledge that each struggle exists. I won't deny another in order to assert my own. And so starting off from this point, and then what does it mean to then be working to in my own struggle while also thinking about and engaging with others? And this is where I think about also like what you're saying. Sometimes the mutual aid is like the learning and the transmission of knowledge and the experiences. So I've been thinking as we get prepared to do tours around the manifesto and talks about the manifesto, preparing around this question and thinking about and reflecting this question. And where I'm landing right now is that if it feels for me based on the experience of working in this space and my other like work, it's like the local is where the physical stuff manifests. It's the practices and the engagement. Whereas like the connection to the global becomes even if we just this is the place where I strategize with others and think about others. So I'm not just thinking about my movement alone. It doesn't have to be that you do something and it always is something that also impacts the global, which I'm realizing maybe it's like part of the assumptions that's being made is like to be local, global connected, it means that what you do at the local level has to have a global impact. And I'm realizing maybe it's really just about the relationship and how one is about the thinking and the strategizing and like the orientation, and the other is maybe more focused on the tangible, actionable things. Yeah, and everyone here has also done some manifesto talks. So have you heard that question? And what are your thoughts on like that relationship between the local and the global?
Yeah, I want to jump in to that question very quickly. It's just that for me, it has been very fascinating to see how like in different places, the response is super different. And for example, in France, like people were like always, and not only in France, like in Europe, I would say, like they were kind of wondering like, okay, so for you, you're saying, yeah, internationalism is important. There are things happening, struggles happening all over the world, like in Lebanon, in Sudan, in Syria, in Chile. So, but we are so tired here. We are so depressed, so tired. And you're kind of asking us to be in support of other struggles. And that has been like the way of thinking. And it's very, I think there's something quite interesting in terms of positionality, because, for example, whereas in Abya, for example, in the talks we have been doing, like in Chile, but also like in Uruguay, there were some in Argentina, in Mexico, or in Peru, we have been meeting like different comrades discussing the book, and Colombia also, and they're like. Here, at least, the question about the relationship between the local and the kind of international issue is way more evident for everyone. Like there's not such a problem in thinking that our local struggle is super connected with so many struggle, and that being involved in this local struggle, it can be enough. You don't need to be doing like I don't know, to go to every demonstration of every struggle in the world, like to be internationalist. That's not it. And you don't need to be like always like or I don't know, listening to all the news and reading all the geopolitical analysis to be internationalist. It's absolutely not that our proposal. And I think here there's such a huge impact, for example, of extractivism, capitalism, and so on, that it's way more obvious how interconnected our interconnectedness, you know? So the question is posed very differently.
Yeah, I think it's also interesting in the People's Want how we see some regions coming together as well, because we just had in February a regional gathering for Asia based in Thailand. And I didn't go to that gathering, but the people that went were saying that it's the first time that many of them have actually connected on a regional level. So, you know, it is building those relationships and bringing people together, which is so important. And once you know each other, once you see people as friends, it makes the practical work so much easier to do in terms of providing real solidarity and mutual aid.
Yeah, and just to build on that, I think our enemy, the empire, it's very organized. They they have links, they have powers, and it's easier to get us so isolated, everyone in its own context. So I guess, yeah, like mutual aid is a key also, but like in a way refusing this binary logic and geopolitical approach that really prioritize the state interest itself.
In the last festival, for me, like the things that felt more energized and exciting was like the development of the mutual aid project, what it means for us to practice mutual aid, the Majora project, which is the network of physical spaces, which we'll talk more about, and just the general sharing of our experiences. There was a lot of space to just listen to someone from a different context, listen about their struggle, their experience. Yeah, we acknowledge that, like, yeah, we're not listening to the whole story. We're listening to a slither of the story. But I met people and listened to struggles that I would not have been able to in that way otherwise. And so it's creating these like spaces where people could engage about their experiences of popular power, share tactics, strategies, and dream together.
Well, there's the quote from the manifesto, only the peoples can save the peoples. And that's what we're really trying to put into practice through mutual aid. And it's developing very organically within the network anyway, because people are having an issue and they're putting out a call amongst the other members. Maybe it's for technical support, maybe it's for translation support. And that's happening very organically. But then we also have this Mujawara project, which is Mujawara is a word which means neighbouring in Arabic. So the idea behind it was to build a network of self-organised spaces across the globe and make them neighbour each other, to join together with each other. And those spaces look very different. The only requirement is that it's a physical location, it's somehow self-organised, it's working on trying to build some form of autonomy locally. And that includes canteens, cooperatives, farms, social centres, any physical location. So this is a part of the network that I think many people are interested in getting involved in. We already have quite a few Mujawara places from various across various geographies. But then also we have coming up in June this International Month of Action, which is a way for people also outside of the network to get involved with the People's Want if they would like. It's open to anyone. And the theme of this month's action is internationalism from below. So people are organising different activities. Some people are doing protests, food events, talks, showing films, but it's a way to come together and really to start addressing these issues of internationalism in your locality and in your community. And then any money that's raised from that is going to be used towards supporting the opening of 2 new spaces of the Mujawara network, one for the Sudanese diaspora and one for Syrian revolutionaries inside Syria. So that's a very exciting project that's coming up, and we're all working to organise around. And if people are interested in getting involved in that, do reach out to us to find out more.
I don't know if like only the people save the peoples is something, a slogan very widely known, like in English or in other.
The mutual aid version of it is only we could save us. There is a
Okay.
famous mutual aid slogan that's at least well known in like North America.
Because only the people save the people, like without an S. Solo el pueblo salva el pueblo. It's a very old slogan in South America, like coming like from self-organized housing collectives, but very, very old, like from the 60s or the 1970s. And that was very, very widely known in popular and left organization and so on. And it's still very widely used when there are like, for example, emergencies. I don't know, huge earthquake and you need to rebuild. And so you use it. And I think one of the beautiful acts that we did, and I think it's also what we're trying to do with the People's Want, is like we put up in plural, right? And it makes me also think about the name of this network, the People's Want, which is also an echo to the slogan from the Syrian revolution, right? The people want the fall of the regime. You can say it in Arabic, I'm sure.
Al-Shab Yurid Isqat al-Nizam. It was for the whole of the Arab Spring, organised around the same slogan.
And what we did there, like the political gesture, was to put it also in plural, right? So it's kind of a gift from the Arab revolutions toward like the revolutionary movement that we're helping to build globally. And the same with the name of the book. I think we like to put things in plural, you know, because the name of this manifesto is Revolutions of Our Time. And if you don't recall it, or maybe you didn't know about it, but Revolution of Our Time was a slogan from Hong Kong Revolution in 2019. It was Revolution of Our Time, and since we read it as a generational moment of many revolution and uprisings in many places, we put it in plural. So I think it's quite a significant gestures, this plural.
It reflects also something else that I think we do within the network and organizing. And that relates to popular power. And so like, yeah, we focus on popular power as our birthing of revolutions and like learning from these struggles and these moments of ruptures from the system. And that is the manifesto, like the path in which it retells the lessons and learnings. But also within the way we organize the network and the way the network is structured, it is about building popular power and like building the skills of popular power. Within the network, the way we relate to each other as various members, collectives coming together in an international network is a way for us to practice these political questions that we have and experiment with how we work with each other, but then also the way we organize the network itself and the way like our working groups work and things like that is a way for us in itself to like, how do we not only build an internationalist network from below, but then how do we literally structure it and govern it, and like how does it build its own autonomy while not be consolidating power? And these are questions that in a lot of my political experiences, like we'll deal with that after. And one of the things I love about the People's Want is that we're not putting it off. We're trying in the moment while also thinking about it. In these little ways, I see us like the language that we use is a reflection of the practices. A lot of it is hidden, but it's like signaling. If you know, basically, right?
Yeah, there's always a challenge with language, especially when you're trying to reach over so many contexts to try to use language that everybody can understand. But in certain contexts, of course, it always is problematic in some way or another. And I know, like, for a couple of our publishers, the fact that the People's Want is pluralized was a little bit problematic because it looked like a typo, but it was intentional for us to have that.
So we spent so much time writing this text. First a group of people, but then discussing it, sending it to like hundreds of people all around the world who have been participating in uprising, in revolutionary process, in self-organizing locally or globally, in mutual aid projects and so on. And then we finalized this version of the text that was, a lot of work, but also a lot of fun or very, very interesting, sometimes very hard discussion, because we don't have like a unified, I think Leila was explaining that, a unified position. We have differences of experience, also differences of ways of organizing, and I think everything is somehow in the book, where we can develop some ideas, and we did develop some ideas based on the experience of the people who have been participating in these different uprisings, and also the questions that are still open for us, where we don't have answers. Some questions are very old questions of revolutionary organizations, like, I don't know, the relationship between organization and the real movement. Let's say, like the place of armed struggles in revolutionary movements. So some questions are quite difficult, and we developed around those questions what we can say in common to organize together. And on other points, we do have commonalities that are very important. Like, for example, you were naming Israa, like the fact of not being, not putting priorities on struggles, on some struggles over others. I think it's something super important. For example, as a Chilean feminist, is something very important for us, because like feminists have been historically like put on a second or third level of importance after, for example, the class struggles and class liberation or national liberation. But I think something that we have learned from, even like, for example, the feminist revolution that has been going on in the last decade, is also like this these practices that we are now putting together in the People's Front. Is one of the sources of experiences, but there are others, of course, as we were saying, like the Syrian revolution, the Sudanese revolution, and other revolutions. But I think that's quite interesting. So read the book.
You should definitely read the book. You get it from Haymarket's website, or I'll let y'all in a little secret. It's also available in PDF format on our website, thepeopleswant.org. You could find it there in English, French, Arabic, and Spanish, and find it bookstores everywhere. And maybe tell your library to get one. Imagine leaving these in like libraries everywhere. That'd be super dope. Any final thoughts, y'all? Like anything you want to add, you want to expand on?
I want to say that revolution itself is on progress, and we don't need to control the movement. All we were trying to do through the manifesto is to nourish the movement. And that's when you can see the mutual aid and the mujawara as part of the building the popular power. We were trying to create a network of connection between revolutionary group. We have this radical position as pro-revolution. We're trying to pool resource and build material mutual aid. We're trying through Mujawara to map places of refuge and welcome to people in need. We're trying to build this force that can support the movement and the uprising. And above all, we're trying to do that through autonomy, through self-sufficient. And this is all our lessons from different revolutions. Earlier mentioned the Palestinian case. So we know that the Palestinian movement was able to survive through solidarity and through this kind of containing the revolt action going. That's what I wanted to add.
It's great. I wanted to read a part of the book. It's the very, very, very ending, so that you really need to read the the whole book, which is very accessible. It's not a very dense book. Some people say they can read it like in a few hours and one afternoon. Instead of taking a nap, they read a revolutionary book and they get re-inspired to continue their own struggles and their own fight, and also to have hope again, and to want to be willing to organize and to give all that energy that needs to be given. So it says, we need to find a revolutionary horizon, not just in order to survive, but to live a life worth living. Now is the time to build structures that can withstand the storms of tomorrow. Now is the time to extend and consolidate our connections. Our respective circumstances will continue to deteriorate, but tipping points of all kinds will create opportunities for change that we can turn to our advantage, provided that we are ready. Every step we take, every obstacle we overcome, brings us a little closer to significant victories. Victories that can offer some comfort to the souls of those we have lost in battle, who are waiting to rest in peace. To structure this new force that we are calling for, to give shape to its action, there is still much to be done. Success will depend on responses to the proposals we are making in this text, on the number and determination of those willing to work with us. We are aware of the magnitude of the task. We are learning from the failures of our elders. We know the many threats we face. The odds are not in our favor. Perhaps we will not turn the tide, become that tsunami. But as a Catalan friend once said, there are times when not taking risk is a risk not worth taking.
Beautiful. That's a beautiful way to end, Jules.
Yeah, thank you. So we're going to put information where you can find the book down in the info, as well as our website. If you're interested in participating in Majora Day, you'll find an email link on the website, and you could follow there. And hopefully we could actually organize a mutual aid focused conversation on the Mutual Aid podcast. And yeah, I'm really thankful for y'all for joining me, Leila, Jules, Alaa, in this conversation. What are your last words?
And me, just thank you so much. It's so nice to have Alaa and Jules with us on From the Periphery for the first time.
I'm super happy to be here because I'm a listener from the Periphery. So I feel like super, excited to be here. Thanks so much. I don't know if maybe we have to recall, like, if people want to organize like book presentation, discussion, debates, meeting the collective, that they can write to us.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for hosting us. This may be my first podcast. So I hope I was a light guest. Yeah, and to end with, the revolution is an ongoing process. You can jump in anytime.
Y'all were great guests, my favorite guests, honestly. So yeah, we'll put information in the show info on the website where you could get books, but also if you want to participate in either hosting a book event, in promoting the book, we could, if you're doing virtual, we could do call-ins with other members of the network. If you're doing physical, we are in the process of trying to organize a physical tour in the US. We're open to political debates and engaging in discussions that challenge the manifesto or build on the manifesto. Or if you're interested in the Majoras, we'll leave the email for you to reach out. And if you enjoy the work from the Periphery Media Collective, please think about and maybe join our Patreon. For as little as $5 a month, you could be a member, and it goes really far to helping us support and stabilize ourselves as a young grassroots media collective and do the work of elevating voices from the periphery. On the Patreon, you get access to our monthly hangouts, exclusive content, one-off things, and yeah, we're thinking of other interesting ways to make it a more engaging space. Thanks all. Really appreciate y'all being here.
Thank you.